Okay, so thank you guys for coming out tonight, and what are some of the topics we've been covering this week? Not this week, this semester. It's been a long week for me already. You never introduced your friend.
To me?
Yeah.
Oh, this is my boyfriend, Roddy.
Roddy? Thanks for joining us, Roddy. We appreciate you letting us have Scarlett, one of our favorites. So, what are some of the topics we've been going over since we've been meeting this semester?
We all road to God.
All roads lead to God.
Talked about morality last week.
Okay, morality. What else?
Science and religion.
Yep. Science and religion. Yep. Christian, you did the problem of evil, and you also did not religious pluralism, but relativism, right?
Yeah.
So we've been covering a lot of different topics, and so tonight we wanted to kind of take a little bit of a different approach. This isn't going to be so much an apologetic for Christianity being true or not. We've done numerous talks on that. If you guys go to our YouTube channel, for example, you can see all the talks we've done on that. In fact, I did a talk earlier this semester with science and faith and whether or not those two conflict, etc. So be sure to check that out. Tonight, I kind of want to look at I don't know, I guess some of the implications. That is, what difference does it make if God does or does not exist? And a lot of people, believe it or not, as I talk to some students on campus, it's kind of almost apathetic about this. Like, doesn't really matter one way or another. And so I want to contrast like naturalism and theism, kind of. So this will be really discussion based. I want to get your guys' thoughts. I want you guys to at times put your naturalist hat on. So naturalism is just kind of the view that nature is all there is. There's different spheres a naturalist could take as far as beliefs. So I don't want to say they all hold to the same exact thing. But naturalism, as I'm using it, is just the view that God does not exist. Theism, and the view I'm going to be using it, is basically like monotheism. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So I'm not diving into particular, like, necessarily Christian doctrine, though we'll get into a little bit of it, but more just contrasting the views of naturalism and theism. So, what do you guys think, I guess, before I start? Does this issue matter? Or, I should frame it like the title. What difference does it make? What difference does it make if theism or naturalism is true? What do you guys think?
You said there were a lot of implications. I mean, if naturalism is all there is, then basically it implies that life has no meaning and that there's no point to anything, really.
Okay, so Chase says if naturalism is true, then it would seem as though life has no meaning and there's not a lot of point to anything. Go ahead, Frank.
If naturalism is true, then life has no meaning. There is no morality. No one person's words or laws or anything is no more significant than anyone else's. Whereas if theism is true, hang on, I can't read this now. If theism is true, then morals have an objective source, basically, as do law, because most law is based on morals, and that which isn't, well, that's subject for another discussion. And whereas naturalism, there's no afterlife, and your death means nothing, and neither does your life. With theism, there is an afterlife, your life means something, and so does your death.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on that?
If God doesn't exist, if God does exist, that means that humans do not have any innate morality, and that has been given by a God. If there isn't a God, that means that there is a internal, like, sense of morality,
Okay.
like basically a basic sense.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
something that you can consider, is there a basis in some morality, or if God doesn't exist?
Okay. That's good. So those are some good things. So I want to make sure, one of the things we want to do is, as we go through this, we want to make sure we represent both sides accurately, right? So it's not going to do me any favors to make a straw man of what atheists or naturalists believe and then attack it, right? Because what will happen is, when you're in a discussion with an atheist that actually knows what he's talking about, you're going to get your clock clean, right? So as we go through this, just keep in mind, I'm trying to be as charitable as possible. I want you guys to put your, atheist cap on with me, think through some of this stuff with me, as far as how would they argue, and we'll just kind of compare and contrast. So again, as far as like an apologetic for the Christian worldview, we're a Christian organization. We obviously don't apologize for that. If you go on our YouTube page, Asher Christie Winthrop, again, you can see numerous talks and even debates that we've done on the topic. So let's jump into this. So there's several different areas that I could think of when we look and contrast these two particular views. So, for example, origins, right? Where do we come from? I think this is a very fundamental question, right? Hey, good to see you. Oh, you're fine. You're all good. You can sit over closer if you want. You don't sit all out there by yourself. Origins is an important question, right? I think because the idea of where do we come from is going to have these other implications. Where do we come from? Why are we here? What's the purpose? Morality, right? This is a big topic in today's culture. It's always been a big topic. But especially today, you see the issues of human rights, human dignity, ethics, all these particular things come up. Epistemology, that is kind of how we know things. Is it possible to know anything? Is truth absolute? Christian, did a talk last week on that, so you guys can check out his stuff on that. What is reality? Is nature all there is? Is everything in the universe, can it just be simply reduced down to matter and material? Or is there actually immaterial realities? Things like God, angels, demons, even things like objective moral values, laws of logic, etc. Again, what is man's purpose in life? That is, why are we here? And then a big question that would obviously come up is, what happens after death? Is there an afterlife? Is there a judge? Is there someone that we are to be accountable to? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Is there nothing? Right? These are all questions, I think, that have some of those big implications. You guys think of any other issues that might fall on this list? I think we covered them all. Stephen and Jay? We're talking about what difference does it make if God does or does not exist. So I'm not doing so much an apologetic, but just kind of looking at the implications. So look at what is a worldview, and we've talked a lot about that this semester, so won't spend a lot of time on it. But basically, philosopher Stephen Cohen says, speaking somewhat technically, a worldview is a conceptual scheme or intellectual framework by which a person organizes and interprets his experience. Less technically, a worldview is a way of looking at the world as one's place in the world. It is a perspective on reality. Christian philosopher Norman Geisler and William Watkins like a worldview through a pair of colored eyeglasses. If one looks at the same object through green-colored glasses, you'll see it as green, while another looking at the same object through red glasses will see it as red. People with very different worldviews will often see the same facts in a very different way. So that's kind of a worldview. And so as we look at those particular issues on that list, the worldview is really going to inform how we would answer a lot of those questions, right? So for a Christian, what would be our worldview? How would we be interpreting the world? What are some things we we would do, we would use.
So we say there's a God
Yeah.
who's like, all knowing, all loving, all powerful, who saved us, and we see humans as, having a fallen nature, so like, we do things wrong.
Okay.
We have to make up for that, and that's where salvation, and all that sort of stuff would play out. We have morals because of the God and things and play
Yeah,
out.
so some of the anthropology stuff we've been going over on our Thursday night, or Thursday, morning, theology class, okay? So, a way we view man, what else? What are some other things in the worldview that how the Christian would view, what are the tools primarily?
The Bible.
Yeah, the Bible, right? The scripture would be a big one, right? God's revealed word to us, revealing certain things that are right, certain things that are wrong, certain things that we must do to be saved, right? We can get a lot, which we've talked about through general revelation. We can know a lot of things like God exists. I think we can know God is good. We can know a lot of different things, intelligent, design, etc. But certain things you can't just get from reason alone, right? So, for example, that man is a sinner and Jesus died on the cross for our sins. So you can know through history Jesus dies on the cross, but it's got to be something revealed through God to us that Jesus died for our sins and that belief in him will save us from our sins. So that would be an example. And then again, everyone has a worldview. It's not just relegated to the Christian. The naturalist also has a worldview. And I would say everyone shares somewhat of a burden of proof to answer what system best explains reality. There's a really good discussion or debate on YouTube between Dr. Frank Turek, who we've had here a few times with Cross-Examine Ministries, and Christopher Hitchens, who at the time he was alive and was an atheist. And this is actually the topic of their debate that they had. What best explains reality? And they looked at a lot of those topics that I went through as far as origins, etc. So the questions such as truth, ethics, meaning, etc. are all used to make sense of the world, and nobody's neutral on that. People have a view on this, right? And so I think the Christian shares a burden, when we're doing evangelism and we're talking to people and we're sharing the gospel. People want to know, well, why should I be a Christian? Why should I believe that the Bible is true? Right? We should be able to give reasons for that. But I would also say the naturalist, the person, or even other worldviews, Islam, for example, that would say Jesus is not the Son of God, did not physically rise from the dead. They have a burden of proof as well. So if the Christian is giving reasons and arguments for the resurrection, the other side, you have to kind of give reasons also. It's both sides have to give some reasons. So as far as origins go, again, we're not giving necessarily arguments for what one is true, but rather looking at the philosophical implications. And just real quick before we jump into it, I'm not saying that whether the outcome is desired or not proves what worldview is true, right? Sometimes Christians may say, well, you know what, if naturalism is true and then there's no God and there's no point to life and then you just die. That's depressing. Yeah, it might be depressing, but that doesn't mean that it's false, right? It can still be true just because something may have a bad outcome. On the flip side, sometimes Christians are accused of, well, you just believe in God because it makes you feel better and it makes you happy, etc. And yeah, that's true, but just because those things are true doesn't mean therefore Christianity is false either. And it's, we try and give reasons to show that's not the only reason, right? Sure, the implications of the views certainly, bring up on how we view it, but particular outcome isn't evidence for, whether it's true or false. So, look at naturalism. So, what would naturalism say as far as the origins of the universe? So, in life, etc. So I'm open to be corrected. As far as to my knowledge, this is what kind of the standard view is that the universe came into existence about 13.8 billion years ago through the Big Bang, or Big Bang cosmology. Earth formed about 4.6 billion years ago. First life emerges around 3.8 billion years ago, and all life can be traced back to a single common ancestor. So I should say up front, there are Christians who also hold to Big Bang cosmology. In fact, a lot of Christians in the apologetics world do hold to Big Bang cosmology. So when I'm putting this out here, don't get confused as far as like old Earth versus young Earth creation. It's not what I'm talking about, because there are Christians who hold to an old Earth. I'm not going to get into that debate about what I think is right, but the difference here is, the distinction is, unlike the old Earth creationist or Christian who would say, yeah, the Earth is, the universe came into existence 13.7 billion years ago by the Big Bang, they would say God is the efficient causality. He's the one that brought the universe into existence, rather than the universe just popped into existence from nothing or by nothing. And then again, first life emerges around 3.8 billion years ago. All life is related and can be traced back to a single common ancestor. Any other thoughts or ideas on this? So I would say that the universe, of course, comes into existence, no supernatural cause. And when we're talking about supernatural, that is kind of above nature, right? So in a naturalistic worldview, nature is all there is, right? If nature is all there is, and matter is all there is, and like, the famous atheist Carl Sagan, the universe is all there is, was, or ever will be, then, nature's it. Nature's the whole show. So you don't have a supernatural or immaterial cause outside of the universe bringing the universe into existence. Second, life is not directed by any outside causal agent. So the Oxford biologist Richard Dawkins, and if you listen to atheists like Michael Shermer and others, they would say evolution is directed, but it's directed from the bottom up, and that is through natural selection, through mutations, etc. But there's not some kind of outside supernatural agent that is directing or causing the mutations, etc., or evolution. So, within theism you have, again, like an old Earth creationism, where they would hold to like an intelligent design view that God creates the animal separately, distinctly. You have a young Earth view that God creates about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, worldwide flood, but again creates the major phylas. There's no evolution going on as far as what they would call macroevolution. The term evolution is slippery. So the young Earth and the old Earth creationists and the intelligent design theorists are not saying species don't change or animals don't change, or there's no, they're not saying that. They're just saying that there's limits to the particular change. So the cat and the dog are not related ultimately back in time to a particular common ancestor. And then a third option that some Christians would hold to is what's called theistic evolution. And so that is the view where basically they're saying God uses evolution in order to bring about life on the earth. So, does that make sense? Right. So those are kind of the three differing perspectives within theism. So naturalism is not holding to any of those kind of things. Human beings ultimately have no ultimate significance or meaning over other species. So I'm not saying that the atheist is not going to say, they will say their particular life has meaning. They're going to say their particular life has some purpose and has some meaning, but they are not going to say that ultimately there is this ultimate or objective meaning or purpose to life, or that even human beings, contrast this, we'll see with theism, are made particularly in the image of God or anything like that. The solar system and the planets look designed, but just happen to be in the right universe that permits life. So some may go to things like a multiverse and say there's just multiple universes out there and we just got the cosmic lottery. It really is. The fine-tuning of the universe is one of the best arguments for theism. And atheists like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, etc., has said they think that is probably the strongest view for theism. So there isn't a whole lot of real great explanation as far as the fine-tuning of the universe goes. So that's kind of the naturalist view. Again, comes into existence, no supernatural cause. Life's not directed by outside any causal agent. Human beings don't have any ultimate significance or meaning over other species. In the solar system, planets, etc., they look designed and we just happen to be in the right universe. With theism, obviously we say the universe comes into existence at a finite time in the past. That is, there is an outside causal agent, and we want to separate that from something like pantheism, right? We're not saying that the universe and God is the same thing. We're saying God is outside, above, and beyond the universe. Dr. Geisler would give the example like the painting and the painter, right? The painting is an expression of the painter's mind, but the painting is not the painter. The painter is outside, above, and beyond the painting. So theism, monotheism, would say the same thing, that the universe comes into existence at a finite time in the past. Meaning that the universe is not, say it's not eternal, that it's contingent, that is, it's dependent upon an outside causal agent. And again, go to our YouTube page, we've done numerous talks, there's good philosophical arguments, I think, that show this, as well as scientific arguments that would also point to this. Life is directly created by God. Again, there's differing views, and I'll ask you guys. Again, we'll just contrast intelligent design with theistic evolution. What do you guys think? What are some of the pros and cons? Who would say that maybe God used evolution? Go ahead, expand on that for us.
I feel like God being like the great designer, like the creator, I feel like it didn't just, was like a snap thing. I feel like it was really thought out type of thing. It was like an infinite knowledge, and I feel like we have a bunch of evidence within nature to show the intelligent design of everything that exists. And I think that evolution is a perfect way to explain how, and then we have physical evidence of things developing. Like we have like bones and skeletons, and we have like our own DNA, and see how that is related to other species. And the fact that we have intelligent minds, I feel like is an indicator of God's hand in making humans his good design that came from evolution. And it's a long process to get to us being the final product.
Right, so would you say then that view would refute kind of the naturalist view of evolution?
Yes.
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Oh, Steven, Victor?
It could be like a tool that was used, like a natural tool, just a natural order that was created that just happens to be a natural process that goes on.
Okay.
Might not be, just a natural process.
Let me ask you guys this. How would you know the difference between, so in science they do what's called methodological naturalism, right? So we're not talking metaphysical naturalism. That's the naturalism I'm kind of going over as we're contrasting. So methodological naturalism is just this idea that just by method, you're just looking at the method itself, right? Saying, for example, God is not involved. When I say he's not involved, I mean he doesn't have the angels there tinkering with the molecules or something like that in the testing, right? Things run by natural law. God upholds natural laws. Don't get me wrong with that. How would we know? Like, what would be the difference between naturalistic evolution and theistic evolution? What would be a way we would know it? what would be a way we could test it?
As far as test what somebody believes, either way, or
As far as what model's correct. So if the theistic evolutionist says God created the universe and is using, biological evolution, etc., the naturalist says, no, God doesn't exist, but evolution is the way we got here.
well, they have to explain how evolution began too. I mean, you have to explain, there's a beginning to that, so you have to explain how that even began.
Okay, so it has to be like, origin of life or origin of evolution, evolutionary processes.
If they found a common ancestor, that would refute the idea that an intelligent design of multiple creatures, because if the method of evolution existed, and he created that,
Right.
the idea that macroevolution exists, if it was from one single ancestor, could, in theory, say that God did not create evolution.
So, okay, so are you contrasting
Yeah.
evolution with intelligent design?
Yes.
So that's not where we're at yet. We're just,
But isn't theistic evolution can't have a
I should
common
probably define
ancestor?
I should probably define my terms better. So when
Yeah.
I say intelligent design, I'm talking about like the Discovery Institute and kind of the modern scientific theory that is put out by people like Mike Behe, Philip Johnson, etc. That some would say that you can have a what do you call it, kind of a common ancestor back, but a lot of them would hold up things like irreducible complexity, or even say that the rate of mutations is not been enough time in the universe, for example, to go from saying whales evolved into wolves, or birds evolved into dinosaurs evolved into birds 65 million years ago. So when I'm saying theistic evolution, I mean basically the process of Darwinian evolution. They would just say God is kind of the mind behind that and directing it, as to where naturalism would say that there is no God. It's just evolutionary processes. That makes sense. Yes, go ahead, Jay.
Just for clarity, do you think it would be correct to say, like, a theistic evolution person would say, okay, whatever the scientists say about evolution, that's the method completely that God used to bring about life as we know it. But the ID person, the intelligent design person, would maybe say, perhaps some of the time it was evolution as we see it, but God needed to intervene at least in certain times or certain spots specifically.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think for a large part of it, though, things like origin of life, certain complexities, like if you guys read, Mike Behe wrote a book a while back called Darwin's Black Box, and he looks at things like irreducible complexity, like of the eye or the blood clotting system or some other things. Basically, he's arguing that natural selection would have eliminated several of these particular components, to where if you don't have all these, he gives the example of like a mousetrap, where he's saying if you don't have all these particular pieces of the mousetrap doesn't function. And so for something like eyesight, or he gives examples of blood clotting, etc., that those particular things have to be there in order to function. So that's, yeah, I mean, also people like Fuzz Rana, with reasons to believe. A lot of these guys, Dembski, they've given multiple tests you can know, to basically whether you can detect whether it's design or chance. Go ahead, Frank.
Another good one is Genetic Entropy by Dr. J.C. Sanford. Focuses more on the relationship between the laws of thermodynamics and DNA strands. So like instead of genetic entropy, that would be like another, or not instead of irreducible complexity, it would be like another research path, as you said.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I think this is all good stuff. I think this is, we should do a talk sometime just on kind of the different views of creation. So that's good, and I think as Christians we want to be gracious, and allow people to have differing views, because it's just Bible's not exactly a biology textbook, and so we kind of have to go through the science that we have and nature, et cetera, to kind of explore. So, let's see, fine-tuning of the universe is best explained, we would say, obviously, by a theistic God. One of the interesting arguments, I'm not a theistic evolutionist myself, but William Lane Craig, who's a Christian philosopher, actually gives an argument basically where he's saying that for evolution to even be true, kind of in the Darwinian sense of evolution, you have to have a life inhabitable planet. And the fine-tuning of the universe is so incredible. So many things had to go right. The size of the sun, the size of the moon, the distance of the sun, the distance of the moon, gravity, just all, I think it's numerous, what he calls anthropic constants. And Hugh Ross actually wrote a book called the reason the universe is the way it is, something to that effect. But he looks at all these particular different anthropic constants, and what Craig argues is, if evolution is true, that would actually be an argument for the existence of God, because to have a life-inhabitable planet, where you can even have a life, is so incredibly unlikely, if everything is just by random chance. It's really interesting, yes, it's kind of used as an argument for the existence of God. So that's kind of that's where we get with our origins, okay? You guys kind of see the differences there, clearly, on origins. Again, look at the talk I did at the beginning of the semester on science, because I think as we actually looked at the Kalam cosmological argument, and I think gives better reasons and evidence that would show that theism is actually a better explanation, but kind of see the different metaphysical views. Let's go on to morality. What time do we got? I don't have a watch. 7:42. All right, so let's look at morality. So, again, let me correct me if you guys think that naturalism may hold a differing view. Humans are a product of their environment and have had morals and values ingrained in us through evolution. Things that hurt the human species are morally wrong because they threaten the health and well-being of the human species. Many naturalists, and most naturalists, would say morality is subjective and can change as we evolve. Though some would say, few would say that morality is objective, and they would ground that in the second point there, that they would just, for example, look at Sam Harris's book, and he's an atheist philosopher, basically tried to ground objective morality into this idea of well-being, that anything that hurts or threatens the well-being of the human species would be wrong. What do you guys think about that? If you're a naturalist, how would you argue? How would you come up with where morality ultimately comes from? What do you guys think?
So it's whatever keeps the species going. So something like giving, or something like caring for people who are less fortunate. That would be something to keep your species going.
Okay. So keep something that keeps the species going. Okay.
I feel like it's kind of hard to have objective morality with this, because you just going off of what you said. Like, well, what if I think the best way to keep the species going is social Darwinism, and to do away with the people who are less fortunate, so have a better, stronger species.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, which one's right?
Yeah. So how do we know what one we should follow in order to do what's well-being? Well-being according to who? Hitler? Right? That's kind of the idea. Okay. What else? Yeah.
I think it's like a common thing that nature is about balance, and like naturally, like the universe and nature rise off of that, and so there's like a natural sense of things being off or wrong or harmful, just because they aren't in tune with the balance that is present in the nature of the universe.
What do you mean by the balance, or the balance of the universe?
If you look at like, I guess, like the nature cycles, like if rain, we need rain to have water across so that we can survive and have food.
Right.
Nature
would you say that that's like a moral wrong? Because we're talking about moral evil. So, for example, droughts or fires.
No,
or
I mean, that was one example, but it can be applied to morality, I feel like if we talk about, I guess, like overpopulation or something like that,
Mhm.
and we know that there's a limited amount of resources, is it morally right to, like, kill people or murder people so that enough people get the resources that they need, or is it
Right.
morally right to let everyone live and experience life and just make do? Like, I feel like there's questions like that that can be answered through nature.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else?
I was thinking that maybe, that morals do change over time. I think maybe there is a base of morals, but we always define them in different ways. Like, we as a nation are one for freedom of all, but we understand that that has not always been the case.
Say that last statement again. I'm sorry.
We live in a nation that it says there are freedom for all.
Uh-huh.
That hasn't always been the case. So like we might say, we try our base would be not to hurt anybody, but how we define that is we take, oh well, these people aren't counted as everybody.
Right.
So while the truth of a morality is the same, how we
Right.
define that changes.
I think that's a key point. So not even I wouldn't say the way we define, I think it's the way it's applied, right? So that truth that all people should be treated equal, fairly, etc. Obviously, good principle to have. But right, so sometimes certain cultures, America have unfortunately passed where that wasn't always the case. But the principle is always held, right? It's just it wasn't applied correctly. But I would say, I guess I would ask is, in naturalism, why is it the case that all people should be treated the same? If God does not exist.
We kind of have to go on our own gut, you have to feel like. You kind of have to go by like, say, I would want to do that, or use an empathetic look. Keep a base of morality on empathy, or a base of morality on economics, or a base of morality on utilitarianism. Like, you have to find another base of morality that's not a supernatural being.
Right. Yeah, good stuff. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Scott.
Would it be correct, or would it, well, no, not correct, but, could naturalism have been like the blueprint for some of the divine revelation later on that was used to not create morality, but understand morality more
Yeah.
of God? I feel like before people had that information knowledge or had like the gospel sort of tried the best they
Yeah.
could. So I feel like this could be applied to benefit people, at least at a certain point in time.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So the distinction between nature and naturalism, right? So as we get to, so as we get to theism, Jay, what is general revelation?
So, theism, general revelation, well, I'll start with special revelation. Special revelation is the idea that God has revealed himself, communicated to us in a particular way or method. In Christianity, that's through the Bible. In Islam, that's through the Quran, etc. But theism, especially at least Christianity, also believes in general revelation, which is the belief that just in the way that one, God has made the world, and two, God has made humans, how we function, what we are, how we relate to people, just by virtue of what we are, that he has instilled in us certain basic things that are common to everyone, whether you believe in God or not, or whether you have special revelation or not.
Yep, that's perfect. Yeah, so a lot of Catholic philosophers have developed what's called natural law. You heard of natural law? Yeah. So I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, people don't have to have the Bible in order to know exactly right from wrong, right? But so that's like that epistemological question, right? Does somebody have to read the Bible or have the Bible to know right from wrong? I would say no. But the ontological question is, does God have to exist for there to be a right and wrong? And that's the issue here, right? Because you'd say if God doesn't exist, I don't see how you get, I think, Pellew, you had said, it's hard to ground an objective morality. Because when you get to this, well, whatever hurts the species, the human species, or well-being of the human species, well, who says that it's the human species that's the arbitrator of truth, right? And what particular humans? Why not, first, why not cockroaches? But second, what humans and who decides what is well-being and what is harm, right? So I think that's the thing. The issue is there has to be an objective standard, to say Hitler bad, Mother Teresa good, right? You have to have a root, something to measure that by, outside of Hitler and Mother Teresa in order to say good or bad, right? So there's a stark contrast, I think, with the morality. There are objective moral values and duties. Human beings have intrinsic value and worth based upon being made in the image of God, right? Not based upon your color, not based upon your gender, not based upon your culture, but because you are made in the image of God. And that's why every January, we have Clinton come do a whole thing defending the pro-life position. He gives a secular defense using biology and philosophy, but ultimately it's grounded in the fact made in the image of God, right? That's not a physical thing, as we've talked about before, but that's why we have intrinsic value and worth, not because we're the highest on the evolutionary spectrum, but it's because we're made in the image of God. So we have a duty to love our neighbors, to love ourselves, and to also, I think another important point, to care for creation, right? God's given us animals, God's given us creation, God's given us an amazing place to live, and we're to care for it and to be good stewards over that and not to treat that lightly. Some would say truth is absolute, some would say it's subjective, it's judged by the naturalist. They would say that the way we know is through the scientific method. Only it's the best way to know how we know things. There are no such, there are no holy books or revelation from God, primarily because there is no God who writes holy books. Supernatural claims cannot be tested and they are on the same level as fairy tales or Santa. So for example, miracles can't be tested through the scientific method because the scientific method is observable, testable, repeatable. Miracles normally aren't testable, observable, and repeatable. And so those kind of things they would say go out the window. What would we do with that? How do we answer that kind of an objection? What would you guys say to that as far as the miracle claims and science? Does science disprove miracles?
Maybe, like, the way that we develop science and the way that we grow an understanding of, like, the world around us is through, like, research and, like, experimenting, but I think we have to have, like, a sense of humility knowing that we might not have the answer to everything. Like, science is a wonderful tool,
Yeah.
but there are things that exist outside of it, and science is more just about explaining what's there, and if we aren't sure about what's there in the first place, why would we be seeking through science? So I feel like it's, like, in the case of miracles and things like that, if we don't initially even believe in the possibility of them, then why would someone be interested or intrigued in developing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
that's
good.
like a research element.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
Maybe miracles are what is when something happens and we don't have all of our scientific knowledge at the time can explain it. For me, a miracle may not be a supernatural event. It's a start of a scientific journey. So if something happens, we can't explain it, we use all of our science to figure out what it is. we ask questions like, how did this happen? Can it happen again? What around there caused it to happen? Maybe that's the beginning of a new theory.
So if it's something that continues to happen, then it wouldn't really be a miracle, right?
Yeah.
I think a miracle is kind of defined as it's a supernatural or, you know, some kind of act outside of nature, something that's not, can't run it through a test tube and continue to repeat it. But you're right, I mean, these things, I think you and Skylar are both right. Science is a wonderful gift, right? You say God has given us. We should love science, etc. I guess the question would be, is it the only way we can know things? Go ahead, Jack. Did you have your hand up, Christian?
Thank you, Christian. I think of it as like, can a metal detector find dollar bills? No. Does that mean dollar bills don't exist? No. They do exist. It's just the metal detector was not built for the purpose of finding dollar bills.
Yeah.
Although there's real cash and real value in the dollar bills, just because the metal detector works splendidly and it helps you find cool stuff at the beach and in your yard, doesn't mean that's the only way that you have to find things of value.
Yeah, and that's really the big issue, right? Is science, like you say, it's a wonderful tool. It's not the only tool, right? So if we do these category errors of trying to, science is that which is restricted to things in the world and physical, material stuff. Yeah, not a surprise, you're not going to detect that. Go ahead.
So if we want to say that miracles can't happen, or that supernatural events can't happen, which I think is implied by saying that everything that looks like a miracle is actually something that we just haven't found out yet scientifically, we have to say that natural law is immutable or can't be changed or overridden, which is going to be difficult if the universe began to exist because that's a big change to laws of nature. Or you'd have to say there is nothing that has the power to do those things, that there are no supernatural beings. Those are pretty difficult things to demonstrate.
Becca, you say that?
No,
You raised your hand there. Those are all really good points there. So yeah, we know things, we would say through general revelation, which Jay talked about, special revelation, and of course God speaks through angels, prophets, descriptions, etc. So different ways we can know things. Let's see, universe, again on this issue of ontology, the universe is all there is. There's nothing supernatural, miracles, answers to prayer, etc. It's, the universe is all there is, was, or ever will be on naturalism. On theism, the universe is contingent, it's dependent on an outside source. Miracles are actual and possible. So, the greatest miracle would be creation. And we've looked at a lot of arguments for that. If God can create the universe from nothing, then, for example, raising the dead or something like that, easy. So, theism, miracles are actual, and they are possible. There are immaterial realities such as God, angels, moral facts, laws of logic, etc. The universe is not all there is, but is dependent upon the supernatural cause, who is God. What is man's purpose? Well, again, life exists without any outside meaning, guidance, or direction. We just kind of hit the cosmic lottery. There's no grand design. In fact, Stephen Hawking wrote that book, Grand Design, recently, but before he died. And man is not any more special than any other species. So, they would say that man has purpose, but there's not an ultimate or objective meaning or purpose. On theism, life exists. It's designed by an outside causal agent. Man's purpose is to know Jesus Christ and to be united to the triune God for eternity. It's not health, it's not happiness, it's not material things. All those things may be nice, but the purpose of our life in the theistic worldview, and a Christian worldview specifically, is to know the Creator, to know Jesus Christ and to make him known. Man is made in the image of God and is the highest of all God's creation. Naturalism, of course, there is no such thing as life after death. The way we act in this life is the only chance we have to make an impact for good. There is no day of judgment. There is no day of rewards where all the wrongs will be made right. And ultimate justice must be done here on earth. Theism, there is a heaven, there is a hell. Heaven is a place for those who have trusted in Jesus Christ and have had their sins forgiven. Notice it's not saying, it's a place where good people go, because there isn't any good people, according to the Scripture. People aren't good. Christians are just those who have been forgiven. Hell is a place where those who refuse to bow the knee and repent of their sin and trust in Christ. So again, not an issue of they didn't dot all the I's or cross all the T's. It's refuse to bow the knee to Christ. Humans are held accountable to an ultimate judge who will do that which is right. So there is, definitely a stark contrast between the two views. And, obviously we're a Christian organization and group, so we definitely believe that, Christianity and theism is true. But thought we'd go over that and look at some of the difference between the two views we found. Any thoughts or anything before we close for the night? Really appreciate everybody coming out. All your good questions and all. Good, Charlotte.
I think there is a big difference between believing whether or not God exists. Answer the question of whether.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Jay. Oh, actually, let me go to, what's your name again, bud?
Devin.
Jalen?
Okay, going back to miracles of science, technically speaking, the only way science got started is because we started seeing events that weren't possible, and then later on we had enough tools to pretty much solve it. And, science is only a finite process, so who knows? Maybe we'll understand miracles in science, only when science improves some more, or, maybe it'll take a long time before we get there.
Good thought. I guess from a theistic worldview, we'd say that science is basically a tool that God's given us to be able to examine the universe. In fact, the majority of the scientific branches, most of the founders were actually theists, right? So they didn't see necessarily a conflict between faith and reason or science and faith, but they wanted to know the mind of God, right? So I would say take one of the biggest miracles in the Scriptures, the resurrection of Christ, right? I think science has done a good job showing dead people normally stay dead, right? Now if something, if the cause maker, the creator, the one that brought the universe into existence, if he decides to breathe life back into somebody and bring them back from the dead, I think he can do that, right? I think it kind of goes back to what Christian was saying as far as the laws not being immutable or unchangeable. But, yeah, I think science can help us detect, whether God exists and some of the claims in the Bible are true. But I don't think it'll ever be able to tell us whether miracles happen or not, because I think it's outside the realm of science.
Yeah, and going back to that, science, numerous times scientists sometimes some things are just a one-time event, so
Right.
it's there and then it's gone. Same with miracles.
Yeah.
It's a one-time event, so therefore technically you classify it as science because it's science. Things appear, they disappear. Sometimes without us even knowing.
Well, maybe a good way to define terms there, because I think y'all are kind of saying the same thing just in different ways. Science is we see it as a way to where we understand the physical processes that are happening in the world.
Right.
And miracles are affecting the natural world, so they're going to be signs that there was something that happened, in the physical world, and we can see those signs through science, right? So you can scientifically see that someone has risen from the dead because their heart is now working, whereas before it wasn't.
Right.
And
But the
science,
process of how that happens, right? How they come back from the dead.
right, so the reason why it happens,
Right,
we can't see the reason.
by.
That's a
Like,
supernatural act.
right, like the original, like, cause of
Right.
what caused the atoms to start moving again
Yeah.
and stuff like that, you know, so you can scientifically.
Yeah,
like,
you can see the
observe.
effects of the miracles, right, I agree.
You just can't, like, science isn't gonna tell you
Exactly.
whether it was, like, Barney the purple dinosaur or God.
Right,
You know?
exactly. Go ahead, Frank.
I think it's also important to define more, specifically as to what exactly a miracle is. Like, more than just a one-time event, it's specifically an event that has an effect on the natural world that was caused exclusively by God, you know? Like, it's not just, a supernova going critical and then that's a one-time event. I mean, that sun isn't gonna blow up anymore. Why? Because it's gone, yeah. That's not what I would call a miracle. That's very much a natural process. But science can help you determine, it can't tell you what exactly is and is not a miracle, because as people have stated previously, as science advances, we understand more about the universe and the world around us. We know that some things are possible. It's not magic, it's just combustion or what have you.
Right.
And, but we ascribe the word miracle to less and less things, so the word itself gets watered down much less.
Right.
And so we can ascribe it helps us, identify miracles much better.
That's good, that's helpful. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Would it be like so bizarre to think, like, even though the design of our solar system is really cool, but like in an infinite abyss of space, we know of like other galaxies that are really similar to ours, and like we know that there is like possibly life on, or there has been life on other planets like in the past. Like, I've heard people have argued to me that we are kind of just like not a glitch, but just like a thing that happened, or some mathematicians are working towards finding like the God formula that like explains like how all this happened and why all this happened. But is it, I don't know if it's enough to argue against naturalism that the universe was, or our solar system is so uniquely designed, because I don't think that it is.
You don't think
And
the
there's a lot of
universe,
different
you don't think the fine tuning shows that the universe is?
Right, I feel like cause I view space as infinite, so of course, out of everything, there would have to be at least one, there's probability that one thing worked out and created something as cool as humanity. I don't think that's
Yeah, so
crazy that would evolve or happen.
I think it would go back to a couple of things. The first would be the origin of the universe, right? Why is there something rather than nothing? That's just not a scientific question, that's a philosophical question, right? And so when you look at like the Kalam cosmological argument, which we've gone over, whatever begins to exist as a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe is a cause. Regardless, even if there was other life forms, there's not evidence that there is. I mean, people say that, but it's an argument from, there's not evidence that there is. You got the SETI program that has been trying to pick up, this particular specified information for years and nothing, so, I think the philosophical arguments for the origins of the universe, it's not a scientific issue. As far as the design, I would say like the fine tuning of the universe, the universe is incredibly designed. I mean, like I say, even the atheists like Dawkins, Hitchens, all of them say the fine tuning is probably the best argument for theism. Let me go to Bella and then Frank.
I was wondering if like the Fermi paradox of the idea that an infinite universe, even if it's the smallest of chances, there is an opportunity for there to be another civilization of intelligence.
Like, is there other life
Yeah, like
out there?
if we think of the universe as forever expanding, created but forever expanding, even if it's like 0.1,000,000,001%, there might be another species out there.
Yeah.
So is that made of God?
Well, right. So
Yeah.
if there was life on another planet, and I'm not saying there's not, but it still would come down to, why is there something rather than nothing, right?
Yeah.
It didn't just happen by chance, you still have to have something that brings it into existence.
Yeah, but if our intelligence is what makes us of God, and we're special because of that, would a species on another, in
Are there
another
other,
place-
are there other?
Yeah, would that
life
also
forms?
be made of God?
I don't know, I mean, it's an interesting question, like, go ahead, Frank, you got ready to explode back there, go ahead.
This is one of the main problems I have with arguments for creation or for intelligent design or, theistic evolution, whatever you wanna call it, that are based on probability. Like, it's so the fine-tuning of the universe is technically, at its core, a probability argument. It's mathematically impossible for, the universe to exist the way it is, but that's just it. It's mathematically impossible, not technically impossible, and so you always have people who believe that the universe can exist just because of that technical possibility, even if it's mathematically impossible. So I think it's important to go back to, not just why is something rather than nothing. Jeez, this thing's annoying. Not just why there's something rather than nothing, but what is the basis of life? And that's where you get to the more scientific things, like, what proteins do you need to be in what places at what times? You know what I mean? How is something formed? How can something be formed? And that's where more irreducible complexity comes into the equation. So a lot of things tie into each other a lot more. You can't just go, well, the universe is really fine-tuned, so there's like 0.00001% chance that, God doesn't exist or something. Like, you have to, I think, get into the more nitty-gritty of how things are made and how things
Right,
are
it's more of the whole life inhabitable planet, right? There's so many things that have to go right in order for there to be a life inhabitable planet. It's design, it's exactly the
Yeah,
same.
that's my point is that.
Yeah, the same reasons you look at the proteins or et cetera, as you're looking at the, what's required in the design.
Basically, my point is that, I guess if I was gonna boil it down, I would say that no, it's not possible that there's life on other planets. I don't believe in it, and all the evidence you see that people see on other planets, what they see is like liquid water. That's not evidence for life, that's evidence for liquid water.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not possible. I'd say, I would agree that there's not sufficient evidence.
Because of how life is formed, because of how it can be formed. Not that the conditions can't be met.
Right.
I'm not saying that there couldn't be another Earth with the same, hydrosphere in the same temperature zone and everything
Right.
else. I'm saying that there won't be life on it,
Right.
because of how life is formed, because of the way proteins have to be formed, because of the way they have to be organized, at least not DNA-based life.
I think yours was more of a theological question, though, right? Could
Yeah,
God have
if
made?
there is like getting all of that, the scientific stuff out of the way,
Could
would
God?
they also be of God? Is it the intelligence what makes us a gift from God?
So what do you mean by of God? You mean God
Like,
created
yeah,
us? or you
like
mean
God,
God's
we're
image?
created in God's image,
Okay.
and we're given the intelligence and the reason and all that fun stuff. If we found another intelligent being, would they also be of God?
So,
That would challenge our idea of being like made in His image.
I have a different question for you first. Is someone who is brain dead in God's image?
That's a good question.
Got any answer? Any idea?
I think that like if you have the idea of we're made like physically in God's image, you have the capacity
Okay.
to do that. Like it's all about like the potential to do that.
All right. That's a good take. I'd agree with that. So in that case, things aren't made in God's image because they actually do something, but because they have the capacity to do that. So where does that capacity come from?
In theological sense, we come from God.
Okay. Would you agree with that?
I personally wouldn't, but if we're going on the theological route of somebody who has the ability to be of God, made in the image of God, you have to kind of go on that God created it.
Okay, so this is a completely hypothetical question for you then. Okay. So I think you said it yourself there. God is creating that thing. You have that capacity, which makes it in God's image. So it wouldn't necessarily be the capacity of the creature that gives it the ability to be in God's image. It would be that